Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist, and I help you stop the monthly PMDD breakups. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is in approximately 1 in 5 women, and it makes you want to break up with your partner approximately 1 to 2 weeks before your period every single month. So as someone who has suffered with PMDD for over 18 years, I dedicated my doctorate practice to helping partners navigate those monthly PMDD breakups with everything from attachment styles, triggers, sensitivity to noise, sensitivity to touch, all of the things that you really struggle with when you're in PMDD. And I also dedicated my dissertation to a phenomenological study of the relationship experiences of partners of individuals who suffer with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So I'm not just here to help the sufferer, the one who is suffering with PMDD. I am here for the partners as well. So if you need those private sessions, make sure you go to inlovewithpmdd.com and get those tools. So let's get into this week's PMDD trauma transformational tools that is going to help you stop the monthly breakups and stop the suffering and stress in your PMDD relationship. Let's get into it. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the things that really impacts PMDD relationships, and this is codependency. So today we're talking about codependency in your PMDD relationships. And basically what this looks like is when one partner excessively relies on their other partner for emotional, physiological, or physical needs. And it actually ends up wearing on them, where it feels really heavy for them to start to be into the relationship. And I know that this has happened so many times in PMDD relationships, and this can happen specifically with the partner who has PMDD or even the other partner who doesn't have PMDD. There's this level of codependency where you're depending on your partner to meet your emotional, physical needs, emotional needs, all of the things. And when you are in PMDD and you're already in that place where you're feeling like you're depleted, you don't have any more to give, then you may get to that point where you're like, you know what, I don't have, any more to give, but my partner is really expecting this from me. They're expecting me to meet their needs. If I don't do the things that they need me to do, then all of a sudden it's conflict in our relationship. It's a lot of tension in the relationship. And I've been in this situation so many times where I felt pressure to meet my partner's needs in the relationship. And it's led me to start to resent the way that I was showing up in the relationship. I started to resent them because I was no longer going to that point of really meeting their needs because I genuinely wanted to, out of a place of desiring to. It's almost like I felt like I had to. If I didn't meet my partner's needs, then it was going to be a lot of fighting, arguing, and just bad tension within the relationship. And so when you have PMDD, this is it's very common. And because I deal with a lot of private clients that have this kind of codependency where if you have PMDD, you're depending on your partner to make you feel better. One of the reasons that you may be in a relationship or say, I think that the value of my relationship comes from my partner actually meeting my needs. Like I need them to take something off of my plate. How many times have you been in PMDD and you're like, I just need someone to take something off of my plate, or I feel like I don't have enough to give, or I feel like I want my partner to be more, supportive. So I'm kind of in that space of, if I'm in a relationship with you, what is it that you can do for me? So when you're in a codependent relationship, you're consistently in that position where you're looking to kind of get something from being in a relationship, get something from being with a partner, where there's nothing wrong with that. There should be value in that. But when it's a level of codependency, it's excessive. Okay, so I'm going to go over what the characteristics of being codependent looks like, and then how it really impacts your PMDD relationship. So the first way that that there's codependency in your relationship, right? And again, we're recognizing this is not a healthy thing to have codependency. It is healthy to depend on your partner, but not to the point where you feel like it is literally what you need in order to survive. Meaning, if my PMDD partner does not meet my needs in this way, then I am not going to survive this round of PMDD. I am not going to survive, where I am in my cycle. I'm not going to survive, being able to interact with things, at work. Or it's kind of like, I've been in this situation where if we weren't on the same page, if me and my partner weren't on the same page, then they can't function at work. So it's kind of like they can't function at home, they can't function without you doing specific things. So it's different from you being in a situation where your partner just loves being around you and they want to be, they want you to be there. But it's different if you're expecting your partner to perform, you're expecting them to show up in a certain state. Because as you know, with having PMDD, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be, lively and bubbly the whole time. But if your partner is saying, in order for me to be happy, in order for me to be healthy, I need you to be happy all the time. I need you to have a certain vibe to you. That's when it's a level of pressure, because it's kind of feeling like then when you go into PMDD, you almost feel like you can't, even show your partner that you're having symptoms. I used to feel like that so many times, where I felt like I had to suffer in silence, because if I showed my partner that I was in PMDD, then all of a sudden they would start acting differently. They would always, their vibe would be off. So I kind of felt like I had to hide being in PMDD. Like it was something that I was becoming ashamed of. Like I was ashamed of being in PMDD because it would cause my partner to act differently towards me. They would act like, not as loving, almost like a more standoffish. They would be like, oh, are you in PMDD? And when I would say yes, their whole mood would change, because they knew that I didn't have the same personality. I didn't have the same personality of being bubbly and open and really talkative and wanting to be, super extroverted. When I was in PMDD, a lot of times when I go into PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, okay, I would want to go internal a lot. I would want to stay in more. I would want to kind of hibernate a little bit. And that was the aspect of my personality that my partner didn't really like. And so we got to the point of every single time I was in PMDD, they were almost requiring me, like without actually saying it. They were training me, basically training me to perform a certain way in order for us to be on good terms in the relationship. Like if I showed up happy, if I showed up bubbly, if I showed up like good vibes only, like that version of me, then all of a sudden they would be nicer, they would be more open, we wouldn't have any conflict. But if I showed up and I was going more internal, or I was zoning out a lot, I was disassociating, all of a sudden it became a problem. So I kind of trained myself to have a little bit of anxiousness and anxiety over being in that place of kind of, I trained myself to be in a place where if I was going to show that I was in PMDD, I couldn't show it in a way that my energy got lower, right? I couldn't show it in a way of, my drive to do things were lower. I would force myself to be in those positions of going out and being social. I was forcing myself to act a way that wasn't authentic to how I was feeling in the moment, because there was this level of codependency where if my partner saw that I was in PMDD, then his mood would change. So when my mood changed, his mood changed. That's how you know there's codependency in your relationship, because one of your moods is different. It really like alters the other person's mood. So if my partner's happy, then I'm happy. If I'm sad, my partner's sad. That's not healthy, right? Because it almost gets to a point where, and I've seen this a lot of time with private clients, where if your partner is having a good day, and you're having a horrible day in PMDD, it is a situation where you're almost expecting them to have a horrible day because you're having a horrible day. That's how you know there's codependency. Like if my partner is having a great day and they're out living their best life and I'm suffering a PMDD, but now I have this level of bitterness and resentment because they're out having a good time. So I'm texting them, I'm overly communicating with them in a negative way to kind of ruin their good day. I've seen this happen so many times where you don't feel good about your partner having a good day when you know that you're suffering in PMDD. When you know that you're suffering in PMDD and you have an issue with your partner and how they're having a great day while you're suffering, that's when you know that it's a level of codependency within your PMDD relationship. So another way is that there is excessive caretaking, right? So when the codependent individual, they take on the role of taking care of you excessively in the relationship, right? They feel responsible for your happiness. I've seen this a lot with private clients where the partner feels like, oh, I have to do everything to make their symptoms better. I have to, be there for them. I have to cause them to, feel better about themselves, even though that they're in PMDD. And it's kind of like your partner is not responsible for making you feel better in PMDD. I'm going to repeat that because a lot of times our brain is skewered into feeling like, oh, because I have a partner and I have PMDD, they're supposed to make me feel better. It is not their responsibility to make you feel better when you're in PMDD. It is not their responsibility it is their responsibility to care that you're suffering in PMDD, but they don't have to make you feel better. It is your responsibility to get the tools and make yourself feel better. Just like they need to be able to manage their own emotions, they need to be able to manage themselves. You need to be able to do the same thing. But a lot of times with the codependent individuals in the relationship, what I've noticed is there's a difficulty in setting boundaries, meaning, it is the inability. You feel like you can't set a boundary in the relationship because if you set a boundary, it's going to make your partner mad. I can't say that I found this very hard for me when I was trying to set the boundary of my PMDD partner's morning routine, which I do every single day, especially when I'm in PMDD. I started to feel like I can't set this boundary of saying, I need this hour and a half for myself, because then it would make my PMDD partner mad. Then it would make my PMDD partner moody. So now I felt like I can't set a boundary that's even going to make me feel better in PMDD because it's going to hurt my partner's feelings or they're going to take it personally. This is how you know you have codependency in your relationship, because the boundaries that you are setting is almost like a personal attack to your partner. They're taking you setting a boundary as a personal attack. Oh, you don't want to spend time with me for that hour and a half. Oh, you're shutting yourself off from the relationship. Oh, you're shutting down. It's like, no, no, no. You're not respecting my time. Like, I'm taking this time out so that I can show up to the relationship the best of my ability, but you're taking it as a personal attack. Like I'm doing something specifically wrong to you on purpose to cause you to suffer, when I'm really just setting a boundary for myself. And the reason why it gets to that point is because they're codependent. They're waiting for you to come back and meet their needs. So it's almost like when you're setting those boundaries and you're doing those things that are making you feel better in PMDD, you have this other person waiting for you at the other end of it, right? There have been so many times where I've been in this situation where I try to create that space, create those boundaries in the relationship, but then I know that my partner is waiting for me to call them back. Like I used to put my phone on do not disturb all the time, and then they would be, waiting for me to call them back. So I felt like I couldn't even enjoy the time that I was having. I could not enjoy the time that I was having with setting these boundaries and doing what I needed to do to not suffer in PMDD, because my partner was sitting there waiting for me, because there's a level of codependency in the relationship to where I couldn't just, do what I needed to do to feel better in PMDD without feeling like that they're sitting there on the other end waiting for me to be done. And it's almost like I had to over explain myself as to what is it that I was doing, because I wasn't in that place of meeting their needs. So the next sign that there's codependency in the relationship is there's this people pleasing behavior. So we all heard about the stress response, the fight, the fright, and the fight, the flight, and the freeze. But there's the stress response of the fawn. And what the fawn means is you have this people pleasing behavior, right? Where you're just telling your partner everything that they want to hear just so you don't have that stressful kind of confrontation. So when you're a people pleaser, you're probably agreeing to things that you don't really agree to, right? You're fearing rejection, you're fearing abandonment. So you're agreeing to things within the PMDD relationship, even though you don't necessarily like them. So a lot of the codependent individuals are people pleasers, right? They fear rejection, they fear abandonment, and they feel like if I speak up and say what I really want to say, if I speak up and say what I really want to do, and it's not what my partner wants to do, then my partner might leave me. My partner might reject me. So you start agreeing to things that you don't necessarily agree to because you're in that people pleasing mentality of being codependent. You're feeling like the only way that I can make my partner happy is if I do this set of things that they like. You're not telling your partner, hey, I know that this happens a lot with intimacy, where your partner may want to be intimate like first thing in the morning and you like to be intimate at night. Instead of having open communication with your partner and saying, hey, babe, why don't we switch it up and, be intimate in the evening time or something like that, you're almost saying like, oh, if it's not in the morning, like they like, then I guess we can't do it. Like you're not asserting your needs. You're not saying what you want out of the relationship because you're fearing that if you speak up, then it's going to cause a problem. If you speak up and say what you really feel, what you really want, it's going to cause a problem. So I want you to get to that realm of when you're recognizing this codependency in the relationship, you're recognizing that it's not healthy. And the biggest thing is it's not sustainable. When you have codependency in a relationship, it's not sustainable, meaning you can start to do things that are like people pleasing activities, but you can't continue to do it for a long period of time. So the next sign that there's codependency in your PMDD relationship is there's this fear of abandonment. You constantly feel like your partner is going to leave you. You constantly feel like your partner is going to reject you if you don't meet their needs. So it's making you feel like I don't want to be alone in this relationship, or you can have really, really low self-esteem because you have PMDD. So you may be feeling like, oh, the least I can do is kind of do this for my partner, or the least I could do is meet their needs in that way. You have this lack of identity where you don't even know what you really want to do. All you know is you know what your partner wants you to do. Your identity is in what your partner wants. And this can happen slowly but surely. You can be subconsciously trained to be codependent by when you do certain things in the relationship that you know that your partner doesn't like, or your partner doesn't like it, the mood changes in the relationship. All of a sudden you have fights. All of a sudden you have arguments. So you learn to not assert yourself in a certain way because all of a sudden it's going to cause problems in the relationship. It's going to cause fights. And I've been there so many times where I really recognize that if I act a certain way, like I said, if I go internal and I don't act bubbly, or if I don't act lively when I'm in PMDD, I know that it causes a problem. So I started to have a different persona, individually, because I felt like if I felt bad. I felt bad that I couldn't show up the same way that I would show up in my follicular phase. I started to think that there was something wrong with me because I wasn't being a certain persona, because my partner made me feel less than. I started to feel less than who I really was because I was in PMDD. And so when you get into that realm, a lot of times when your self-esteem, when your self-esteem has been destroyed, it's a lot of times your partner can have those narcissistic mentalities, right? There's a sense of entitlement, right? And this is where codependency and narcissism, it really goes hand in hand, because you're in that situation like, okay, my partner feels so entitled, but they feel entitled to me acting a certain way. They don't care what it takes out of me in order to show up that way. They don't care that it's taking everything in me to act happy, that it's taking everything in me to act a certain way. They're almost like, when I show up and I'm acting that way, they just kind of sit back and I'm like, yeah, that's what I like. Even though I feel like they know, when they have narcissistic tendencies, they know that it's taking everything out of you. They know that it's not sustainable. They know that it's draining you, but it doesn't matter because it meets their needs. It feeds that ego. And they kind of have that realm of entitlement. So it's like, yeah, it took a lot out of you, but like, this is what I wanted in the moment. So when you notice that your partner has that narcissistic mentality, that's where the codependency lies, because they're saying, if you want me to treat you lovingly, if you want me to treat you like with support and with love and affection and attention and validation, you need to show up to me this way. Right? That is what the narcissist will do. If you behave this way, I'm going to give you the love, the affection, the attention, the validation that you want. If you don't show up this way, you're going to get neglected. You're going to get abandoned. You're going to feel rejected. You're going to feel like there's something wrong with you because you're not showing up this other way. And they're almost going to minimize. They're really going to minimize the amount of effort that it's taking for you to show up that way. They're going to be like, what's the big deal? Why is it so hard for you to be loving towards your partner? And it's like, it's really hard for me to be loving towards you because the only way that I can show that I'm being loving is by acting a certain way that is not authentic to how I'm feeling. Meaning, if you're calling me being loving to be open and bubbly and extroverted, where in reality I'm suffering and I really want to go internal and I want to be more introverted and I want to be more calm and I want more peace. But that to you is seen as a personal attack because you may not like that version of me. So if I act in that way, it's almost like, why can't you just be this way? Why can't you just be loving towards me, right? So you get into this realm of where you feel like your partner is just not caring about the amount of suffering that it's taking you to show up in that certain way. There's a level of codependency where you feel like there's a boundary where you can't even say, babe, I'm sorry, I don't feel like going. I don't feel like going to this outing tonight. Like, you could never say that because they're going to be like, what do you mean you don't want to go? Like, oh, or they're going to give you the cold shoulder and shut down on you. And then you're almost going to feel like, you know what, I might as well just go. I might as well just go to this activity. I might as well just do this thing that I don't really want to do, because if I don't, you feel like you're going to get punished because you're going to get treated differently by not doing the things that you would normally do in your follicular phase. So you drag it out of you, and then you get into this realm of burnout. You really get into this realm of burnout because you feel like, I have to do this. And then when you're in, this is when we get into PMDD, where there's this emotional reactivity. When you get into this realm, you're very hyper vigilant, right? You're almost telling yourself, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. I got into this realm so often when I knew that my partner was going to come to visit me. I would get so anxious and feel like everything needed to be perfect. It had to be perfect. It had to be this certain way. My personality needed to be this certain way. The house needed to be clean. I couldn't have like PMDD days where the laundry wasn't done, where the dishes weren't done, where things were out of place. So when I knew that my partner, we were in long distance, when I knew that he was coming, I would literally like force myself to super clean all of the things, right? My emotions were all over the place because there was this level of codependency. I knew that I couldn't have him show up to the house and I'm just laying around. I couldn't have him be in this place of, oh, I don't feel like doing anything. Like I would almost have to have this level of, I need to have an itinerary of things that we're going to do because I needed to show him a good time in order for him to act supportive and loving towards me. I couldn't just have him come in the house and I'm just laying around and say, oh, I'm so depleted right now, that I don't feel like it because of my PMDD symptoms, right? I almost felt like if I started to talk about my PMDD symptoms and list them out, it's almost like somebody was like rolling their eyes. They were just like, okay, like, or if I would say, hey, you're doing this. I was trying to communicate the tools, like I'm teaching you. And I would say, hey, when you do this, I'm triggered. That got to a point where my partner was like, you're always triggered. Everything's a trigger for you. So like, this is where a lot of times you may feel like you're trying to use the tools that I'm giving you on this podcast and your partner is being very condescending about it, right? This is where you know that your partner may have these narcissistic tendencies and these codependent, tendencies because they don't care what it takes out of you. They just want you to get the job done. That's the persona that you kind of get where it's like, oh, no. Maybe if I open myself up and let them know that, hey, this is causing me a lot of suffering to meet your needs. I really want to continue this, but it's causing me to suffer. And it's kind of like almost like you feel like there's something wrong with you. Like why can't you do this? Right. Thank you, authenticity. Like, why can't you do these things? So you push yourself to do it. And so codependency can really be damaging to the relationship because it creates an imbalance where one partner is overly dependent on you meeting their needs for their self-worth. I remember so many times if I didn't do the things that I know that my partner needed me to do, then all of a sudden, what would come up? Jealousy, insecurity, overly questioning the things that I'm doing, overly questioning my whereabouts, overly questioning, all of these things, like my motives and intentions. And I would be like, I'm not even doing anything. But I knew that if I didn't show up the way that they needed me to show up, they were going to get jealous. They were going to get insecure. So it's almost like a form of punishment. Like if I don't meet their needs, I'm going to get punished by not meeting their needs because there was this level of codependency. Because I would be like, oh, I'm going to, not answer my phone for a couple hours because maybe I was feeling tired. I wanted to nap. Well, I would get woken up from a nap with all of these text messages. Where are you? What are you doing? Why did you do this? Oh, that's funny that you cut your phone off, or that's funny that you put your phone on do not disturb. Why were you doing that? Why were you in the store so long? And it's like, wait a minute. Like I'm honestly not doing anything. But there was this level of overly questioning my motives. And I know specifically for my private clients that when you start to attack someone's character, that is a trigger when you have PMDD, because a lot of you aren't really doing anything. And when your partner is questioning your motives and intentions because they're jealous, because they're insecure, now you're feeling bad about yourself. You're like, I'm just existing with suffering and PMDD and I'm trying to manage it the best way possible. But now I'm having to over explain myself to you because you're so codependent on me and my actions and how I'm showing up that you're making up stories in your mind about what I'm doing because you're really jealous. You're really insecure. You're really in this place of feeling like your self-worth is tied to how I show up. So when your partner is codependent and you decide to go more internal and you're not as vocal in your actions, they start to make up stories like, oh, maybe she doesn't want to be with me, or maybe she this, or maybe she that. They live in the land of what if, just because you're existing in PMDD, or just because your personality is different. They start to make up a story as to why, you're in this realm of acting differently, where you're genuinely acting differently because you're different in PMDD. Like, that's it. I'm not acting differently because I'm hanging out with somebody else because I'm cheating on you. I have a different persona. I have a different personality when I'm in PMDD. And when you have that codependency, they can't recognize that it has nothing to do with them. And I have to tell this with my private clients, and I say it all the time. What your partner does has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. Just because I'm going internal, just because I'm more quiet in PMDD, doesn't mean that I'm cheating on you. Doesn't mean that I'm maliciously doing anything to attack you. It just means that this is the way I am in PMDD. This is the way I am in my luteal phase. But it's so for some people, specifically when they have these narcissistic tendencies, it causes them to start to look at themselves even more. And that's something that they really can't stand. They really can't live with, because when you have that codependency and you start to act differently, they look at themselves in the mirror and it's almost like, oh my gosh, what did I do? What did I do? Even if you never said that what you're doing is causing them to suffer, it causes them to suffer for you to speak less, because it causes them to look and say, okay, if I tell you that I'm suffering, you're automatically going to think, oh, what did I do? Like they almost come to you with like, oh, you're suffering right now, or you're tired, or you're stressed out. Like, what did I do to you? And you can literally say to your partner, it's not because of anything that you've done. I just feel this certain way because I'm suffering a PMDD. But they'll literally take it as a personal attack. And so a lot of times what happens in a codependent relationship, where I start to feel like I need to be a certain way, because if I'm not a certain way, then it causes you to like act differently. I start to neglect my personal needs. I remember that I started to stop doing my morning routine because it caused them to act differently so much that I was just like, you know what? Maybe if I stop doing my morning routine, it'll cause our relationship to get better. Maybe if I stop creating these boundaries, it'll start causing them to show up differently, right? What ended up happening is it led to burnout and resentment. I started to resent the fact that I wasn't being able to have my morning routine, because now all of a sudden I didn't get my needs met. Right now, I'm sacrificing my personal needs for yours. It was literally a trade-off. It was literally a trade-off. It was kind of like, if I want to feel better in PMDD, I have to neglect myself in order for you to feel better. So then my partner feels better. They're happy because I'm showing up a certain way, but then I'm suffering. Their happiness was causing me to suffer. And if you have a partner who has narcissistic tendencies, they don't mind. It doesn't bother them. They don't mind. Thank you, Digital Ani, for sharing. They don't mind that I'm suffering in order to meet their needs. So it's almost enabling these unhealthy behaviors, right? And unhealthy behaviors meaning my self-care is put on the back burner. My suffering in PMDD, I'm consistently getting triggered, but I'm not putting myself in a situation where I can address any of these triggers, because all I'm thinking about is you. My lens literally turned to, what can I do to make my partner feel better? What can I do to make my partner suffer less? Even though I was the one with the symptoms. I was the one with the PMDD, but I was consistently focused on my partner. And it's almost like I didn't have time to deal with my suffering and what I had going on, because I was so busy trying to hold up the persona that my partner liked, the follicular version of me. And this is what caused me to kind of count down my PMDD days, where I was like, okay, I have 10 more days of PMDD, 9 more days of PMDD. And I was forcing myself to show up a certain way for that amount of time and say, if I can just get through this week, if I can just get through this day, if I could just get through this day, then maybe, it'll cause my partner to start treating me more lovingly. Like it was almost like a trade-off. Like if I needed more support in my PMDD relationship, then I needed to hold up my end of the bargain by showing up in a way that didn't trigger my partner. Because I started to notice the luteal version of me was triggering for my partner. So when you get into this codependency, it's like, okay, if I act authentically to how I feel in PMDD, it causes my partner to suffer. And then we start suffering in the relationship together because it's all connected. My personality triggers a different personality in him. So then if I act differently, then he'll act differently. So it's a loss of boundaries. There's no boundaries of independency, meaning I can't act independent of my personality and how I feel in the moment without it impacting my partner. I can't take time for myself without it impacting my partner with the jealousy and the insecurity. So what happens is it's a lot of fights and a lot of arguments and a lot of triggers because there is emotional exhaustion. You're constantly trying to fix or manage your PMDD partner and how they show up in the relationship. It leaves you very little energy to manage your own PMDD symptoms because you're so focused on keeping your partner balanced in their emotions. You don't want to have them talk to you a certain way that triggers you. So you act a certain way when you're in PMDD. So you're hiding your suffering, you're holding it in, and there's this bitterness, there's resentment, and there's unforgiveness, especially when you get to that place where you can see that your partner is living their best life. You see that they're fine, and you know internally is causing you to suffer. Whenever I took space, right? And I would be like, oh, I don't want to go out. Like maybe if we planned a trip and I didn't want to take the trip because I know that I have this level of heightened stress and anxiety over, a lot of things. When you have PMDD, you have misophonia. You have misophonia, which is the sensitivity to noise. And maybe you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're so sensitive to all of those things. And now your partner's like, I guess we're staying home. I guess we're not doing that. Like they're making you feel bad about doing something that is going to cause you to suffer in your PMDD. So it's almost like you force yourself to do it, right? So the partner that is feeling that codependency, I literally had excessive anxiety every single time I felt my symptoms come on. And it really impacted my stress and my cortisol levels because I knew that it was going to cause tension in the relationship. I knew that it was going to cause tension with my partner. I knew that I couldn't hold it in. So it was almost like I was in this place of being like, how am I going to get through this? Because, PMDD is 10 to 14 days. For me, it was literally 14 days. But I would also have a lot of stress and anxiety about going into PMDD days and days prior. Like I wasn't even in PMDD yet. And I was already fearing being in PMDD because I knew how it's going to feel for my relationship. I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I'm going into PMDD. One little PMDD symptom would send me spiraling. I would have one little sensitivity to noise, one symptom of irritability, and I would be like, "Oh my gosh, here we go again. Here we go again. Like I'm about to have PMDD." And I would get up in the morning. It was so bad for me that I would go to brush my teeth and my hands were literally shaking. My hands were literally shaking because I was so stressed. I was so overwhelmed and I was feeling like I can't deal with this. This is when you begin to feel very overwhelmed. Overwhelmed because number one, if you're feeling like this on day one, you know that you have a whole nother 13 days to deal with this, right? Number two, you can start to see your partner's mood shift. When you have codependency in your relationship, when your mood shifts even the slightest bit, your partner, it's like they can smell it, they can sense it. You don't even have to tell your partner that you're in PMDD. They can tell because your vibe is off, your energy is different, and they immediately start asking questions. They immediately start making little comments. And so you almost feel like such a failure when you have to answer that question. And when they ask you, are you in PMDD? And you're like, yeah, I'm in PMDD. You could go to the level of like denying it, right? You can start to deny, some of the ways that you're in PMDD. I'm going to answer questions at the end. You can start to deny that you're in PMDD. And so, I did that earlier in my journey where I didn't want to say it. I was forcing myself to pretend like I wasn't in PMDD. And they would ask me, hey, are you in PMDD? I'd be like, no, I'm not in PMDD. even though I knew that I was, but subconsciously I was just trying to pretend that I wasn't, right? So in this codependent thing, you start to suppress your emotions. Right. You're suppressing what you really need in a relationship. You may need your partner to be more open, to be more loving, but you know that the only way that they're going to be that way is if you act a certain way. So you start suppressing it and acting like you're getting your needs met. And your partner may get into the realm of trying to reward you, like really rewarding you for, acting a certain way that's outside of your character. And what this leads to is a lack of intimacy. It's a lack of intimacy because your partner is not really knowing what's really going on with you. When you're lying to your partner about how you're feeling in PMDD, then they don't know you. They know the version of you that you're presenting to them. And so the next thing that you may start to do if there's codependency in the relationship is you may start taking responsibility for your partner's emotions, right? When your partner is triggered, when your partner is acting differently, you may start to say, oh, they're acting differently because of me, or they acting differently because I'm in PMDD. You may start to feel like, if your partner gets more moody, you're like, oh, they're more moody because they can sense that I'm in PMDD. So it's almost like you're punishing yourself for being in PMDD. You're taking responsibility for your suffering and saying, oh yeah, I'm this way because, I'm in PMDD and now my partner is acting this way towards me. They're acting this way towards me because I'm in PMDD. And so another way, and this is the last way that I'm going to tell you that codependency is going to be showing up in your relationship is where you start getting to this point of avoiding conflict, where I would have a lot of triggers. I would have a lot of issues that I needed to bring up in the relationship, but I would choose not to bring it up because I knew that it was going to cause fights and arguments. And I knew that it was going to cause fights and arguments because I was going to be the one to blame. Because guess what? A lot of times you may feel like if you're in PMDD or you have PMDD, that PMDD is the whole problem. PMDD is always the problem if you're in a relationship. So you kind of want to get to this place of saying, I don't have any problems. I don't have any problems. So the biggest thing you can do when you notice that there is codependency in your relationships is to really set those boundaries and stick to it. Set the boundaries and stick to it no matter the cost. I want you to just kind of put your foot down a little bit and say, you know what? I have this boundary, like I had to do with my PMDD partner's morning routine. I have this boundary. This is what I need in the relationship, and let your partner know and let them know that it's not coming from a personal attack. I'm not attacking you in the relationship. I'm not attacking you by saying what I need. So I want you to think to yourself, how can I communicate to my partner? How can I communicate to my partner what my needs are in a way that is not a personal attack? And how can you say it in a way where your partner is not going to take it as being bitter and resentful? Like, what is it that you can do? So set those boundaries and stick to them, because I remember there were so many times where I set the boundaries, but then I would go back on them. I would have the PMDD partner's morning routine and then I wouldn't. I would have it and then I wouldn't. I prioritized my self-care. I knew what it is that I needed. I set it out and I made it very clear. This is a time frame that I'm in, kind of be very ritual with it. This is a time frame that I'm going to have my PMDD partner morning routine, and that's it. Like, it's not a personal attack. I don't hate you. I'm not thinking anything differently about you. I love you. I care about you. And then go do the things, right? Tell your partner, you can reaffirm them, because if they're getting jealous and they're getting insecure, it's nothing wrong with giving your partner some reassurance. But after you give them the reassurance, then go do what your boundary said. Go do the thing. Encourage independence. Just like you're prioritizing your self-care or whatever you need to feel better in PMDD, encourage your partner to do the same thing. If your partner is really struggling, if they're really struggling with managing their, you being a PMDD, encourage them to take counseling sessions. I have a lot of private clients, and it is, the partner that's coming to me because they're like, when my partner goes into PMDD, it's really hard for me to cope with because I do get insecure. I do get jealous. I do start to think that, I'm the reason that they're suffering and all those things. This is something that I can work with them with. And when I work with them individually, it takes the burden off of you as the partner who has PMDD to fix them. If you know that your partner is in this situation where you being in PMDD is a trigger for them, then you know that they need to get that individual help. They need to have the counseling to deal with how they're reacting to you being in PMDD. It is not your job to fix them because you have PMDD and it triggers them. If you know that it triggers your partner, they need to have those individual counseling sessions to process it in a way that is not making you feel like you're the burden and you're the problem. And the next way that you can do this is to communicate openly and honestly. To get the codependency out of there, communicate your feelings, communicate your needs so that there's no assumptions. When you're like, again, you can give the reassurance, but you're giving it in a way where you're not excessively over explaining yourself. You're saying, listen, babe, I understand that you're feeling jealous. I understand that you feel insecure when I go internal, but I promise you, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me, and it has nothing to do with you. Let them know that. And then develop a strong sense of what your personal goals are in the relationship, what your goals are with your PMDD journey, because it is a journey. If you're saying, I want my anxiety to get better, if I want my PMDD rage to get better, you should always be on a journey in your PMDD relationship of navigating whatever symptom is causing the most damage in your relationship. And you're supposed to be on a goal with that and communicate with your partner and say, listen, I'm doing this activity because it's causing me to cause less damage in this relationship. I know my biggest thing for me was PMDD rage. And when I got to that place of recognizing what PMDD rage was and how it was damaging my relationship, I had to learn how to set those boundaries and say, okay, if I don't want to go off on PMDD rage, then I know first thing in the morning when I'm feeling those negative emotions, I need to take space. I need to take space. And it's learning to say no. When you feel like you're getting burnt out and you feel like you're getting bitter and resentful towards meeting your partner's needs, learn to say no and stop overextending yourself to meet your partner's needs. If they're asking you to do something that you genuinely don't have the wherewithal to do, like it's causing you to suffer in order to do it, then learn to say no. Literally say to yourself, babe, I want to meet your needs, but I can't do that right now. I would love to do this for you, but I can't do that right now. It's okay to say no to your partner if it's going to cause you to feel bitter and resentful. Because when you get into that place of feeling bitter and resentful, you're going to have that unforgiveness and it's going to cause you to start treating your partner differently. So a lot of times you may want to be that person. You may pride yourself on being the rock and being that person, but then sometimes you don't have it in you. And if there's days that you don't have it in you, then just say it. Just be open and honest and say, like, I would love to meet your needs right now, but I can't. And the next thing that your partner can do is educate themselves more about PMDD. Like I said, when they have these private sessions with me and they listen to the podcast, they're learning more about PMDD. And the more they learn about PMDD, the less that they're going to think that what they're doing or what you're doing in PMDD is directly against them. They're going to feel like you're not causing them to suffer a lot of times. But if they don't know about PMDD, they may start to think that you're doing it on purpose. They literally, I'm so glad this is helping you. They literally may start to feel like you're just, PMDD is just an excuse to treat me like crap, or you're trying not to meet my needs on purpose. It's like, no, I'm suffering in PMDD. This has everything to do with me and nothing to do with you. Continuously use that mantra and say it to your partner so that they can stop taking your PMDD symptoms as a personal attack. That is what I see that partners do so often is they take your personality and PMDD as a personal attack. Like they did something wrong and now you're punishing them by being in PMDD. You are not punishing them by being in PMDD. It's a separate entity. But when you have that codependency in the relationship, they will start to believe that the only reason that you have PMDD is to cause them to suffer. I remember my ex-partner used to say that all the time. Oh, you're just trying to cause me to suffer. I have premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and that's it. I don't have it to cause you to suffer. I'm not doing anything malicious. I promise you, I love you. I care about you. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And it is approximately 1 in 20 women, and it makes them want to break up with their partner every single month right before their period. This is an actual disorder. And whether you have your partner or not, you're going to still have PMDD. And I say this all the time. PMDD is not being single is not a cure for PMDD. If you get rid of your partner, you're still going to have PMDD symptoms. Are the PMDD symptoms going to be less? Maybe. Sometimes if your partner doesn't have the tools to kind of navigate and manage the PMDD, the symptoms may be less, but it's not going to completely take the PMDD symptoms away, which is a lot of times what people are saying. And I'm like, please don't say that, because then if someone breaks up with their partner and they still have PMDD symptoms, that individual is now going to think that there's something wrong with them. So be very careful about what you're saying, because I've been hearing this in the community so often. It's like, ever since I dumped my partner, I don't have PMDD anymore. No, you have PMDD. Your symptoms are just less. Be mindful of that. Your partner can't take away your PMDD symptoms. Your partner didn't give you PMDD, and they cannot take your PMDD away from you. I'm going to repeat that. Your partner cannot give you PMDD, and your partner cannot take it away from you by breaking up with them. So being single is not a cure for PMDD. If your partner doesn't know how to not have this codependency that we've been talking about, then yes, you may have the codependency going on in your relationship and it's making your PMDD symptoms worse. Absolutely. I will absolutely agree to that. But I will say that if you choose to let go of your partner, you're still going to have PMDD. So what I would say is, if you really love your partner, if you really care about them, it's better to just get the tools to manage and navigate your symptoms versus trying to throw away your whole partner. Because any partner that you have, when you have PMDD, you're going to have to get the tools to manage it. Nobody is going to come prepackaged with the tools to manage your PMDD. It's just not going to happen. Right. So I want you to stop putting those unrealistic expectations on your partner to say, you need to show up and you need to know how to manage PMDD. You didn't even know what PMDD was before. To be completely honest, just like your partner doesn't know what PMDD is. What did you do before you knew that you had PMDD? Nothing. You thought it was weird. You thought you were crazy. You tried to hide it. You couldn't figure it out. Everybody has their journey of navigating PMDD. And just like you didn't have the tools, like you didn't know what was going on with you, your partner doesn't know. And a lot of times before they listen to my podcast or before they have private sessions with me, they didn't know what the heck was going on. They just knew for 2 weeks out of the month you were one way, and for 2 weeks out of the month you were another way. They didn't know if they caused it, if the universe caused it, if the moon caused it. They didn't know what was going on. So don't blame your partner for not knowing how to manage and navigate PMDD, when if you think about it, you didn't know how to manage and navigate it either. So I think a lot of times when the PMDD sufferer goes on this journey of enlightenment and understanding that they have PMDD, they all of a sudden expect their partner to show up a different way. You tell your partner I have PMDD and you send them an article and you automatically assume that's going to give them all the tools of how to navigate being in a relationship with you. It is so much more than that. So let's be realistic in our expectations of our partners when we figure out that they have PMDD. Just telling your partner that you have PMDD doesn't equip them with the tools as to how to navigate a PMDD relationship, right? So the first step is to have them go on their own individual journey of what PMDD does for them. When you go into PMDD, how does it impact them? What individually is going on with their mindset? Because I have so many private clients where they're not the one that has PMDD, but they have a lot of these symptoms. They have anxiety, they have stress, they have overwhelm, they have burnout, they have bitterness, they have resentment. They have a lot of things that are similar to our symptoms, the ones that suffer with PMDD, because they're just trying to navigate a relationship with the PMDD sufferer. And that's a journey that they have to go on. So they need to be able to have room to not be so codependent, right? We want to separate our journeys. My PMDD journey is going to be completely different from a partner's PMDD journey. We can simultaneously go on the journey, but the tools that I give my clients that have PMDD are very different from the tools that I give my clients that don't have PMDD. There are two separate ways that they're navigating PMDD, but it's very individualistic. So you need to encourage your partner to get the tools just like you're getting the tools. And if this is something that you know that you need help with, go to inlovewithpmdd.com, get those counseling sessions, and listen every single week to the In Love with PMDD podcast. It's really going to help you, both of you individually, on your journey of navigating PMDD and getting rid of that codependency in your PMDD relationship. So until next time, we got this. Love you. I hope this PMDD episode helped you and your partner in your struggles within your relationship. And if this is something that you know that you need help with and you need further support, individualized support, make sure you're going to inlovewithpmdd.com and you're getting those private sessions to really work through what you're going through in your relationship, specifically in regards to PMDD. And also, I want you to leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. What this does is it helps other PMDD sufferers and partners find this show that can help them get these free PMDD relationship tools. I remember what it felt like to not know that there were tools out there specifically for PMDD relationships. So I want to make sure that you are sharing these tools with others, share them on your social media, share them with people that you know that are also struggling in their PMDD relationships. Until next episode, this is Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist. One more thing, I almost forgot. I now have the Fresh Start PMDD Partners Workbook. What this workbook can do is if you've had past traumatic experiences with your partner, past fights, past arguments, and they keep coming up every single month in PMDD, I created a Fresh Start Workbook so that you can deal with all of the traumatic experiences that have happened in the past in PMDD rage and all of these things so you can stop going through the same cycle again and again and again. So get that workbook. It comes with a video episode of the actual podcast that I recorded on getting a fresh start in your PMDD relationship. So you're not continuing the same cycle again and again and again. So make sure that you get that workbook. And if you need those individualized counseling sessions, you know where to go, inlovewithpmdd.com. Until next time, we got this. Love you.